Get Rich Education is brought to you by Norada Real Estate and Highlands Residential Mortgage.
Welcome to Get Rich Education with Keith Weinhold, giving you information and ideas on the investment that has turned more ordinary people into millionaires and billionaires than anything else, and can provide you with more wealth and happiness than you ever thought possible. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, and educator, Keith Weinhold.
Hey, welcome to GRE, Get Rich Education, episode 141. Hi, I'm Keith Weinhold. 4 weeks ago, we had a listener come onto the show here. Today, we're going to answer your listener questions. Yes, it's been a long time since I've done listener questions. We've got a listener that bought a Memphis duplex and only calculates a return of less than 20%, when I have said here before that any return of under 25% is disappointing, so what gives there? We've got another listener that asked, how do I get the down payment money for my first turnkey property if I'm just living paycheck to paycheck? We've got a question from a listener whose parents own and rent out a $620,000 single-family home in South Florida, and this listener doesn't think it's working out for his parents. And then finally, if we get time, there's a detailed question about contributing to a 401k versus forming down payments for income property. Before we get to those 3 or 4 awesome listener questions you had, you know, investing in real estate with a long-term strategic vision, that could give you an opportunity to live better and give better than you ever thought you could. In fact, for a while, that slogan, live well and give well, that's been the signature line of my personal email. Now, speaking of giving well, I recently bought a new bicycle here for the summertime. It's a pretty cool German-designed Ghost brand bicycle. It cost between $3,000 and $4,000. I've liked using it so far. And yeah, the bike wasn't cheap, but neither am I. And by the way, that really isn't too much to spend on a bicycle. One can spend over $10,000 for one without too much trouble. But anyway, that made my older 2004 bicycle now expendable. So while I had the old 2004 bicycle at the shop to kind of tune it up before I gave the bicycle away, I didn't quite know what to do with the old one now that I've got the flashier new one. And the old bike, which is very usable, probably even an excellent bike to a lot of people, it had a market value of no more than $300 is what the shop owner there estimated. And I thought about giving my old bike away myself, but then I thought, wait a second, why not let the owner of this little mom and pop bike shop give it away? Okay, that way I could enable him to be the giver. I'd give the old bike to the bike shop owner, enable him to be the bike giver, and then once he gives, he could probably get some customer loyalty or some goodwill or some repeat business out of that act of him doing the giving, plus that eventual recipient would still get a bike. And that would be rather than me just giving the bike away directly to the recipient. So this way, by enabling a giver, I'm kind of enriching the lives of 2 people instead of just one. So it's kind of like a twist on anonymous giving, I guess. I guess you can even think of this as leveraged giving, perhaps. So I share that with you because direct investment in real estate, you know, that's going to enable you to be able to live better and give better. So as you go on and build your portfolio and have more of an ability to give, I'd say consider don't just give, but enable a giver. Think of ways to enable another giver when you give, and you're still going to get a great feeling from it. And you know, another thought about giving is, gosh, this is something I've been remiss on for too long. Don't forget your family, okay? You can see a couple of organizations that we donate to here if you visit getricheducation.com/giving, but I more recently recognized that I should be giving better to my own family. That might be something for you to consider too. Now, not long ago, I spent 4 days with my Grandma Weinhold in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, whom, yes, I call Grandma Yellen for her physical resemblance to Federal Reserve Chairwoman Janet Yellen. Grandma Weinhold, living by herself only on Social Security income, it was a huge deal to Grandma when my wife and I brought over a shopping cart full of groceries, and that made me think, gosh, I should have done more of this sooner before donating to some of these external organizations. So some perspective there. So before you give, look close to home first. Well, hey, there's one really interesting thing to consider with real estate investing. You know how I've discussed how paradoxical it is that real estate investing, income property, it's the top performing investment vehicle of all time, yet real estate does not appreciate any more than the rate of inflation over time. So then how could real estate be that great of an investment? How could these apparently opposing thoughts be true? Well, I think that the disparity is even greater than that when you consider real estate hedonics, because you can make the case that real estate does not even keep up with the rate of inflation over time. It doesn't even keep up with it, but yet somehow it's still the top performing investment vehicle of all time. And how enigmatic is it that these two seemingly contradictory statements can be simultaneously true? Okay, real estate nationally and historically appreciates at a rate of only about 6% per year. And the more you know about economics, the more that you can make the case that the real diminished purchasing power of the dollar per annum, which we're going to call the rate of inflation, is about 6%. Yes, which is nearly always more than the consumer price indices that the government reports. So if inflation is 6% and real estate appreciates at 6%, that makes it appear that there's no net appreciation gain. It kind of looks like a wash to the uninitiated person. And then in addition, okay, consider this. Consider over time that, say, as a seller, you relinquish, you sell one property or sell one residence, and then you move on to the next. There are typically a set of improvements that you're buying in the new home that your prior home didn't have. Okay, think back a few generations ago when homes didn't even have indoor plumbing. They had outhouses. Well, outhouses really started going away by, around the 1930s as it was being replaced more rapidly by having all of the plumbing indoors. Then homes were increasingly built with one indoor bathroom. But then, say, fast forward up to the 1980s, most homes had more than one indoor bathroom. Except for in the smallest homes, only one indoor bathroom. That was perceived as a negative condition, whereas a couple generations earlier, it was seen as a luxury to have any indoor bathroom at all. And this is an example right here of real estate hedonics. Hedonics is a word synonymous with hedonism, meaning pleasure seeking. And economists and real estate appraisers often use a hedonic regression to try to adjust for valuations and inputs on rates of inflation. Another example might be garages. In the suburbs, a garage was once seen as a luxury, and now if a suburban home only has a one-car garage rather than two, it could be seen as a detracting characteristic. Okay, it's the same with the increasing square footages of the entire home over time. Today, homes are 1,000 square feet larger than they were in 1973. So my point is, despite all these hedonic improvements, more bathrooms, garage, greater square footages over time, real estate values still only increase at the approximate prevailing rate of inflation. So you're actually getting more benefit, more house, more improvements, more hedonism for the same cost. And appraisers, they need to practice hedonic regression to come up with a fair market valuation. So therefore, as value increases, the price paid actually decreases in relation to the benefit that you get. That's real estate hedonics. And that's why really one can contend that real estate values, not prices, but values go lower over time. Okay, so here we go then. How in the heck can real estate be the greatest investment ever? Well, you're going to see in just a minute, because this is actually a good lead-in for our first listener question to kind of describe and round out and answer that paradox. But yeah, hedonics are an area that economists perpetually kind of struggle with, and estimating inflation is a completely imperfect science. If the next iPhone model costs 10% more than the current iPhone model, but see that next iPhone model is lighter weight and has a sharper camera and has a faster processor, then does it really cost more in relation to the greater value that you as a user gets? And these are just some of the reasons that rates of inflation are so nebulous. Let's get to our first listener question. It comes from Jeff in Sanger, Texas. He writes, Keith, I'm attaching a couple spreadsheets, hoping you will give them a quick review. We have purchased 3 properties from Mid-South homebuyers in Memphis. And before we purchase any more, I wanted to see what your thoughts are on the numbers. I'm not positive they are correct, but I think I'm close. I think the numbers are a bit low considering what you think is worthwhile, but I want to know your thoughts. I have acted 3 properties now, but unless I'm able to seriously scale the cash flow, it doesn't amount to much, and those numbers aren't even including any management fees, insurance, and taxes, no repairs, lease fees, etc. I want to make this work. I don't want to trade my time for dollars any more than I have to. I've done that for way too long. Hope all is well. Thanks for taking a look, Jeff. And by the way, Jeff is an airline pilot with Southwest Airlines. Great question, Jeff. And by the way, I almost never have time to do this open attached spreadsheets from individual listeners, but I did this time and I thought that you might benefit from it. Okay, so Jeff here has 3 properties, 4 doors total that he bought from Mid-South homebuyers in Memphis, Tennessee. Those 3 properties are 4 doors because one is a duplex and the other 2 are single-family income properties. Let's just look at the duplex here. Okay, it is on North Holmes Street in Memphis. Purchase price $99,700. 75% loan to value means that he made a down payment of almost $25,000. It's $24,925. On this duplex, he got an awesome 4.875% interest rate. Man, that is nice. And it has an RV ratio of, get this, 1.19%. It's got $1,190 of monthly rent. 1.19%, and that is a fantastic rent-to-value ratio, and that is also getting very, very hard to find these days. And it looks like he bought this property over a year ago. So on his spreadsheet, Jeff shows a 19% cash-on-cash return calculated here, with a note below it that I say that anything less than a 25% rate of return is actually a disappointment. That's right on the spreadsheet that I said that. And this is true. I have said that. Okay, I've said here on the show anything less than a 25% total rate of return is a disappointment, but he shows 19% and he hasn't even deducted management and insurance or taxes and some other things from this. So what gives? What's going on here? Okay, and by the way, this is great. I love questions like this. This is digging in and getting to the heart, getting to the bottom of why we're even real estate investors in the first place. So the 25% return I'm talking about is a total rate of return, not the cash-on-cash return portion. And the cash-on-cash return portion, that is just one ingredient of that total rate of return. In fact, Jeff, we're going to push your CCR, your cash-on-cash return, down to 10%, not 19, but 10, because that's after we've gone ahead in that spreadsheet and subtracted out all the recurring monthly expenses from your rent income. That's everything there: principal, interest, vacancy, insurance, maintenance, property taxes, management. Looks like the utility costs are covered by the tenants. And by the way, from your rent income, I like you to deduct at least 10% for maintenance, even though it's turnkey renovated and maintenance is usually low in the first year for that reason. And yeah, at least 10% trimmed off your gross rent for maintenance. But that number is going to depend upon the age and the level of your property. And Mid-South Homebuyers does quite a thorough renovation. But getting back to that cash-on-cash return on this duplex, we're pushing that from 19% down to 10% after all of those expenses are considered. And of course, that 10% cash-on-cash return, that's your annual cash flow divided by your skin in the game. Your skin in the game is down payment plus closing costs. That 10% is just 1 out of 5 ingredients that go into making up the 25% total rate of return minimum that we'd like to see. Anything less than that's disappointing. So let's pull back and look at these 5 ingredients and project what those 5 profit centers might look like for your duplex here on North Holmes Street in Memphis, Jeff. The first profit center is appreciation. That's the first ingredient. Okay, well, projecting appreciation is a guess. How much appreciation do you expect here? In Memphis, probably an older duplex, though I'm not sure. Let's just say you get a 3% annual price appreciation in the property, which is just half of the long-term national average of 6%. So at 3% appreciation with your 25% down payment, you're leveraged 4-to-1. That means you've got a 12% return on your down payment through the power of leverage. Okay, so that's a 12% return from the first of 5 ingredients of this total rate of return recipe. Secondly, let's add in that 10% cash-on-cash return that we've already discussed. Now you're up to a 22% rate of return, 12 from appreciation, plus 10 from the cash flow. Thirdly, with your loan amount of $74,775 here, which is basically $75K, with that and that awesome 4 7/8% interest rate that you've locked in for 30 years, and nice job there, you must have strong credit. But popping those numbers into a loan amortization table means that your tenant, or I guess tenants, since it's a duplex, your tenants are paying down your loan balance principal $92 each month. That $92 per month of tenant paydown is $1,104 for you annually. Divide that $1,104 by your down payment of $24,925, and that's an additional return of 4.4% to you. Okay, so now your total rate of return is up to 26.4%, and we still got two profit centers to calculate in for you here. So fourthly, we've got your tax depreciation benefit where you don't even have to incur an expense, yet the IRS gifts you the ability to write off a portion of your rent income. And this one is hard to calculate because it depends on your particular situation. So let's just call this another 3% tailwind for you. And then fifthly and finally is your inflation hedging benefit, Jeff. The $74K plus that you borrowed gets to be paid back in depreciated dollars over time. Due to inflation, more dollars will circulate in the economy in the future, wages will be higher, prices will be higher, and the weight of your debt burden gets inflated away if you think we're going to have more inflation. And just like inflation impoverishes savers, it enriches borrowers in the opposite way. We'll just put inflation at a 3% rate, though we could sure make that number higher, as you can see after our Hedonics discussion at the top of the show. So here we go. You add up those 5 profit centers, and your projected rate of return on the duplex in North Holmes Street in Memphis is 32.4%, and that is passively managed as the property management and leasing fees are already in there. Now, is there some de facto guessing that I'm doing to come up with those numbers? Yeah, at times there has to be, but that is a rather reasonable, rational, and at times even conservative running of the numbers there to come up with a 32.4% total rate of return. And now there are some limits. We did not include any closing costs along with Jeff's down payment money, though you can often get some seller side help with those. And note that as well, your total rate of return, it's typically going to erode over the years, okay? It slowly goes down over the next few years unless you do some prudent equity harvesting with a cash out refinance or a 1031 exchange. And why does your total rate of return often go down as the property appreciates? I think you know. It's because equity, a zero return component, typically accumulates in a property, but that's it. That's how it works. That's why we do this. That's why I love this. Thanks for the question, Jeff. And if you understood that, congratulations. Like, you know how to keep score. Most real estate investors, gosh, I would say that 90+% of real estate investors out there don't know how to keep score. They might be winning at real estate investing when they think that they're losing. And by the way, there are also real estate investors that are actually losing when they think they're winning. Some landlord by accident, leave a property behind, landlord by default sorts of investors. They think it's awesome when the monthly rent income covered 90% of their property expenses every month. Okay, that is not a winning month. Now, with that discussion about the 5 ingredients that comprise a total rate of return, you can see that paradox that I outlined earlier. Considering real estate hedonics, you can make the argument that as an investment class, real estate doesn't appreciate at all. Yet, when you have a strategy, when you invest like this in an investor advantage market with a turnkey operator, Jeff has a 32.4% return due to leverage, due to the fact that someone else will pay to rent the place from Jeff, due to the fact that the tenant will also pay down Jeff's loan for him, plus the government gives Jeff tax benefits, and the bank loan allows him to hedge inflation. Jeff has created a substantial amount of arbitrage in his life because he creates sound housing for others. Jeff also wrote about wanting to branch out into different markets, which will be a good idea. Memphis is a great cash flow market, but it's good to get into 3 to 5 different geographic markets as you add properties in order to get market diversification. The next question comes from Dan in Worcester, Massachusetts. Dan writes, I listen to your show all the time, and it's very inspiring and mind-changing. One thing it doesn't change is living paycheck to paycheck. How do you advise people to save up for a $25K down payment living paycheck to paycheck? All right, well, wonderful question, Dan. It sounds like you would basically like to know how to get started and have an opportunity like what Jeff has going with the duplex. How do you form a down payment in the first place? Well, there are just so many answers for that. Back in episode 66, I gave quite a few answers for this. One option could be to begin how I started out. One can use a 3.5% down payment FHA loan and start with an owner-occupied duplex, triplex, or fourplex. And with FHA, that down payment can even be a gift from your family or someone else. You can also use the existing building's tenant's income toward your income qualification for the property before you've even bought the property. You're kind of using other people's money before you've even closed on anything. And by the way, being an owner-occupant landlord, if anyone goes that route, you will have some inevitable, we'll call it personnel issues with tenants, okay? No doubt. It's not always an easy path, but it's usually worth it. However, living in Massachusetts, Dan, that's not the most landlord-friendly state, and rent-to-value ratios don't work so well there, and there's some other headwinds. So let's just say this hypothetically, Dan. You ask about forming a $25K down payment for a property while living paycheck to paycheck. So just consider this. My home, my primary residence, it has a market value of $470,000. Let's just say that I would sell it to you for $25K. Yep, I'll sell you a $470K property for just $25K, but you've got to come up with the money in a month. That's the deal, okay? And that's what would that be? A $445K difference. That would be your profit if you wanted. If that were the situation, I bet you would come up with all kinds of creative ways to get $25K in a month if you had this opportunity. You might get a loan from a friend or sell some gold or silver bars or pull money off a 0% APR introductory rate credit card. You would shake some trees to come up with $25K. So my point is, if you have a sense of urgency behind something, you will operate in ways you've never operated in before. And if you think you can't find an opportunity, you will make one. And it's probably never been easier in human history to have an additional income stream, okay? Now, of course, you could take on more hours at work or add a second job, but that's really not a long-term fix. As you can tell, here at GRE, we're really about avoiding trading your time for dollars. And while someone's working at a day job, I kind of favor that before they would add a part-time job to that instead they would focus on getting really good at one thing and increasing their income that way. If you don't have any space that you can Airbnb, there are all kinds of opportunities for affiliate income if you want to grow a following online. And I'd like to ask you this as well, Dan. You know, if someone wants to know about something, what is that one subject that they would come ask you about? What are you seen as a go-to resource for among your friends or your peers? I mean, whatever that thing is, whether it's archery hunting or stand-up paddleboarding or blueberry picking, okay, anything. Position yourself as a leader in that space, and then you can create videos and sell a video course in that niche. And see, that's probably something that you would enjoy doing anyway. So you can monetize, I would just say, stand-up paddleboarding through cloud-based platforms like ClickBank or Kajabi, Kajabi. It's still some work. You're going to need to learn quite a bit about marketing, but if it's developed around a passion of yours, it's not going to feel like work. And a video course is not a physical product, so you can sell an unlimited number of those courses. Just imagine waking up every morning and seeing how many video courses you sold overnight. Now, it's not always easy to get that going. It's going to require learning and even some pain, but that's the kind of work, see, that's time asynchronous and geographically agnostic, meaning that you can do it when you want to and from where you want to do it from. But either way, whether it's taking on more work or learning a new skill by selling a video course with whatever you have a passion for, it is definitely going to take expanding your existing comfort zone. Of course, one cannot just keep doing the same thing and then expect a different result. It kind of reminds me of a meme, and this meme is not directed at you, Dan. This is something that's just human nature in general here, and this includes me sometimes too. And Dan, I hope that mindset and set of ideas help you along with listening to GRE episode 66. Thanks for the question. But this meme I'm talking about was on our Get Rich Education Facebook page a few weeks ago. It shows two illustrations side by side. The first illustration has a man who looks like a politician up in the front of a room of constituents. and the politician says, who wants change? And every person in the room has their hand raised up. They all want change. Everyone wants change. The second illustration shows the politician asking who wants to change, not who wants to change this time, but who wants to change, and no one has their hand raised, okay? That right there, that tells you so much about society and our own mindsets as investors too. We all want change, but we're all scared to change. Change starts with you, not another person, but you. For example, in society, consumers get what they ask for just the same, okay? Do you wish that airplane seats were roomier than they are now? Do you want to have more space if you fly coach? Well, of course you do. But why do you think that airlines keep making the seats so close together? That's because for decades, consumers keep seeking tickets based on the lowest price. When consumers prioritize low price above all else, pretty soon airlines are going to give you just what you asked for. Cheaply priced tickets result in cheaper and smaller seats. They're squeezing people in. Now airlines have to fit more people on a plane to make the numbers work at the cheap prices that consumers keep asking for. So even as seats got smaller, consumers still said low price matters most. So then airlines said, okay, we'll make seats even smaller because consumers keep telling us we want cheap seats above all else. And the reason that we have what we have now, people being crammed into planes like sardines in coach, is because that's just what people keep asking for. And it's hard for me to stick up for the airlines. I have my problems with them, but they just give consumers what they've asked for when it comes to space on a plane. So I really can't blame airlines for cramming people in when the customer keeps saying being cheap matters most. It's the difference between wanting change and wanting to change. Now, if we get a decade's worth of consumers asking to pay 20% more for more legroom seats and avoiding everyday coach seats, well, then that would start to slowly change the sardine effect, okay? So change starts with you. A for-profit business will soon give the consumer what they continually ask for. So if you're living paycheck to paycheck and you want more income for rental property and a rental property down payment, then it starts with you making a change. It's like the Gandhi quote, be the change that you want to see in the world. People don't like a nation that's divided politically, but every use of certain words, and I'm only using the words myself now so that you know what I mean, because I avoid using these 4 words otherwise. But most times when the words out there, Republican or Democrat or conservative or liberal, each time they're used, they divide people. They don't unite people. You could throw in terms like left wing and right wing in there too, I think. So just avoid using words like that altogether, and you'll start to be the change that you want to see. It's easy to want change, and it's hard to change. An investor doesn't improve their lives and give themselves a pay increase by contributing to their 401k. That doesn't give them any chance to improve their lives until they're in their 60s. Give yourself a pay raise with cash flowing real estate, and now you've quit living life by default and you've begun living your life by design. Be the change. We'll get back to listener questions right after this. You're listening to Get Rich Education.
Are you having a hard time finding great investment properties? Unfortunately, the best deals are rarely found locally. Successful investing begins with the right properties in the right markets. Norada Real Estate provides everything you need to invest in the best deals across the U.S. Our simple, proven system will help you create real wealth and passive monthly cash flow. Get your free copy of the ultimate guide to passive real estate investing at noradarealestate.com/guide. That's NORADA realestate.com/guide.
Are you looking to invest in your first investment property or grow your existing inventory? Highlands Residential Mortgage can help, offering down payments as low as 15% and credit score requirements down to 620. Their streamlined process is designed to help investors close their loans quickly and without any surprises. You need someone who knows cash flowing real estate and can help guide you through the muddy waters of today's lending environment. So call Graham Parham today, toll free at 855-326-6802. The Parham team can help you purchase or refinance any of your 1 to 4 family investment properties.
NMLS number 195724, 12001 North Central Expressway, Suite 750, Dallas, Texas 75243. Equal housing lender, not licensed in all states.
Hey everybody, this is Matt Bowles from Maverick Investor Group. You're listening to Get Rich Education with Keith Weinhold, and don't quit your daydream.
Welcome back to Get Rich Education. I'm Keith Weinhold. I've been the host of Get Rich Education for, well, this October it will be 3 years. This whole real estate investing thing and industry, that all began for me when I bought an Anchorage, Alaska fourplex building in 2002 for $295,000. And it took a few years, but I would later develop a great interest in real estate investing because I saw and felt how it changes lives, especially mine. From that first property, I expanded nationally and then internationally. Last year, I became a blog writer for the Rich Dad Advisors. This month, I wrote my first book, and I just really love teaching others. And I'll tell you, the book writing thing, my goodness, that showed me why most people don't write books. Okay, it took me a while to publish my first one, even though it's a pretty short book. What's the quote on the book cover say that I wrote there? It's a quote Robert Kiyosaki said about me, and it says something about me being a bright young man. Well, with formatting and reformatting the book and making these rounds of edits with my New York-based editor, I was soon thinking, sheesh, am I still going to be a young man by the time this publishes, or I'm going to have to wait until Robert Kiyosaki says something else good about me that doesn't have the word young in it, because it says young right there on the cover. Oh, man. But anyway, sometimes I still drive by that first blue fourplex I bought in Midtown Anchorage because it's not very far from my usual travel patterns. It's maybe 4 or 5 miles from my home. And I actually still owned it until 5 years ago, and I sold it for $457K about 10 years after buying it for $295. I only sold it so I could 1031 the proceeds into more and larger apartment buildings. Well, you have a few choices with whom you choose to learn from, and I really appreciate having you as a listener, but whomever you listen to, I would probably tell you, number one, listen to someone with integrity. Number two, listen to someone that practices what they preach and has had real success with it. And number three, maybe it's not mandatory, but it's really helpful if you listen to someone that's invested through the 2008-2009 real estate downturn, just like I have. I tell you to buy for cash flow. That's your safety net if and when real estate values do drop. The next listener question comes from Jamie in New Rochelle, New York. I'm going to sort of, narrate this question because it's a longer email from Jamie. Okay, Jamie's parents that live there in New York, last year his parents bought a South Florida home that has a swimming pool for $620,000, and his parents do not intend to live in that property for 15 years. They plan to live in that home when they retire in 15 years. In the meantime, after months of trying, they finally found a renter for the home, a few months after they bought it, and they've got it rented out for $2,900. Jamie says that after listening to your show, I told my parents that I think they can do better than that with the numbers. Do you think that this is a good investment for my parents? Well, thanks, Jamie, for the question. I can't really tell you whether or not it's a good investment for your parents because I don't really know that much about the home, and I don't know exactly what your parents' needs are. But among the things that I do know, and I think you've alluded to it with your comment, that your parents can certainly do better than this from a numbers perspective. With $620,000 worth of property, that should and could be pulling in about $6,000 worth of monthly rent income, like it would be if it were in investor advantage markets, just playing from a 1% rent to value ratio. They should be getting $6K in rent for that much worth of property, and you said they're only getting $2,900 in monthly rent. So that's an RV ratio of under 0.5%. $2,900 of rent income just actually doesn't surprise me because RV ratios really break down at higher price points. Additionally, I recommend that turnkey buyers be in at least 3 different metro markets in order to be hedged from an economic downturn in any one local economy. So $620,000 worth of property, see that right there, that would allow a turnkey buyer to have, say, 2 homes in each of 3 different metros, so they would have multiple income streams, and there would be more of a durability behind that income with geographic diversification. Now, maybe, Jamie, your parents just really like something about that South Florida home, which has a pool, and they want to have renters kind of keep the place warm for them until your parents get down there in 15 years to retire. And that might work out for your parents, but unfortunately, it almost always never does. And here's what I mean. I don't know your parents' age, but regardless, people's tastes and needs and desires change over time. In 15 years, when it's time for them to move in, they might not want a home with those types of amenities anymore. And, they've also got 15 more years of life experience and vacations between now and then, and they might find that they'd rather retire someplace other than South Florida. Really one of the most common real estate investing mistakes to avoid is thinking that one property can serve more than one use, and that almost never works out for that property owner. In this case, your parents are trying to get the $620,000 home, which is probably a pretty nice home. They're trying to get it to serve both a rental income purpose now and a retirement purpose later, and that almost never works out. Okay, every last one of my income properties are properties that I would not want to live in, even though they're clean, safe, affordable, and functional for somebody else. But see, I'd just be taking too much of a lifestyle hit. But here, while I'm relatively young, they provide cash flow, just like your parents could be getting cash flow for 15 years from low-cost properties in investor advantage markets rather than doing this in South Florida. And then when it's time for them to retire, they could pick a suitable home for retirement for whatever their whims and desires and needs are at retirement. So by buying the retirement home 15 years early, there's a substantial risk in the guessing at what they're really going to want later when it's time for them to retire, and plus they're foregoing a lot of rent income in the meantime. It's paying an opportunity cost. So boy, I'm going to say 95% plus of the time it would have made more sense for them to buy those income properties in investor advantage markets. And then at retirement, they could sell those properties if they needed to buy the retirement home or hold on to the property. So I think about opportunity cost there, Jamie. Thanks for the question. I've got one other question about 401ks from Eric in Miami, Florida, but it gets pretty numbers heavy. We're getting short on time, and I gave Eric an email reply on that one, so we won't get to that here. You can submit a question yourself at GetRichEducation.com. From there, just click on the contact page. And please understand, I cannot possibly respond to every inquiry there, so please don't feel offended if you don't get a reply, but you are appreciated, and we do read them all. Instead, if you want to chat in person, when you're over there at GetRichEducation.com, click on the events page. You can see where I'll be, and hopefully we can meet in person at an industry event. I'm Keith Weinhold. I've loved answering your listener questions today, and I'll be back next week to help you build your wealth. Whether or not you want to build passive income from real estate investing specifically to help you quit your day job, I don't know. That's up to you. But whatever you do, don't quit your daydream.
You've been listening to Get Rich Education, telling you what the wealthy won't tell you about real estate and investing.
Nothing on this show should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for individualized advice. Opinions of guests are their own. Information is not guaranteed. All investment strategies have the potential for profit or loss. The host is operating on behalf of Get Rich Education, LLC exclusively.
Cash flow real estate investors nationwide and worldwide, this is Get Rich Education's Keith Weinhold. Forbes has rated Memphis, Tennessee as the #1 cash flowing market in the world. Our good friends at Mid-South Homebuyers have been Memphis's premier turnkey real estate provider for 14 years with a stellar reputation and an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. Owner Terry Kerr was born and raised in Memphis. Yeah, he knows the market and has renovated and sold over 1,000 houses in the Memphis area. Find out what their many repeat buyers already know. Their houses are completely renovated, even come with a 1-year builder's warranty and a lifelong rental guarantee. They're a perfect fit for the first-time out-of-state investor or the seasoned investor diversifying their portfolio. Mid-South Homebuyers friendly staff makes investing easy. Learn more at midsouthhomebuyers.com or give them a call at 901-217-HOME. The preceding program was brought to you by your home for wealth building, GetRichEducation.com.